Give a damn about a hater when I feel like it. Not today, not today, not today, not tomorrow. Get out my way, please, I'm trying to get paid. Not today, not today.
You know, that theme song really should be like a Fortune 500's theme song to their board meetings. That would be so dope. Just call into that earnings call and you hear that song. Not today, get out of my way, trying to get paid. That would be dope. Welcome in, everybody. This is technically the second edition, second board meeting of the year. We are back, Bully the Board, Kevin, Seth, and Steve. We got a good lineup today. We're going to break down everything college football, talking about EPA, blue chip ratio, returning production, as well as a breakdown of all the Power 5 conferences. So if you haven't already, if you're new here, just a reminder, please give this video a like. Please subscribe to our page. We're going to put out a lot of good content throughout the year. And all of our socials are the same throughout. At Bully the Board, Instagram, X, TikTok, you name it. At Bully the Board is where you can find us. We're pretty active. We go live all the time, especially on TikTok. So stay tuned for all the good stuff that's to come. So, all right, boys, college is upon us. Are you ready? I'm ready to get this thing going. So what we should do first, or Seth, what I'd like to do, start with you, is get a snapshot of where things ended last year across the college landscape. So let's get our matchup map for college from last year up. So boom, all the Power 5 teams plus a little more on here. Or no, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it just Power 5?
I think it's just Power 5. Yeah. I get some nuance. Like, I get some people asking, like, where's Sam Houston at? I'm like, I don't know. But I mean, I see them on here, but you got to, sometimes you got to dive a little deep,
For sure. All right. Well, speaking of diving deep, let's try to do just that, man. So, given how everything ended last year and what we're looking forward to this year, let's break down the matchup map for info real quick.
Yeah. So, as normal, so we have our offensive efficiency on the x-axis, defensive efficiency on the y-axis. And what this landscape allows us to do is get an overall landscape of the relative strength of each team, not only on offense, but defense. And then from that, we can kind of compare teams, right? It puts everybody on the same metric. In this case, EPA, or expected points added per play. And as you can see, I mean, where do you see, the best teams at the end of the year? There's Georgia, there's Ohio State, Georgia won the national championship, right? Those are teams with good offenses and good defenses. And then you can see some of the stragglers, right? Like your Colorados, right? Bad offense, bad defense, where you don't want to be. And this gives us an idea of like where teams are coming from going into the season. We'll obviously break down things like recruiting, blue chip ratio, and returning production to look forward looking, but you'd be surprised how well an EPA per play basis, like right now, is going to predict next season, right? College is all about talent, right? And recruiting. And so teams that do really well consistently, like Georgia, Alabama, right? They're able to recruit, and therefore they're able to do well season in and season out. So that's why we like to use these types of things, because they just give us a team's relative overall strength to another team, right? Which is really great for prediction and betting.
Yeah. So, okay, let's not bury the lead a little bit. I want to expound on that just briefly from like the textbook definition of blue chip ratio, and I guess why it's important. And then let's get into some Power 5 stuff.
Yeah. So blue chip ratio is a ratio. I mean, you can define it a couple different ways. From my understanding, what we're using for, which we've gotten from On3, thank you very much. We've used some of their data to create a database, and this is the definition of 4- and 5-star recruits that make up the total roster, right? So no surprise, your Ohio States, your Alabamas, your Georgia, a vast majority, I mean, more than 75% are made up of 4- and 5-star recruits, right?
Right.
Now that makes a lot of sense.
I know this says SEC up here, but it's obviously not.
This is for all teams. That's just an artifact. And then what is kind of really important to point out here is, right, like the Power 5 teams are so much more talented and win so much more, mostly through recruiting. And you can see like actually how many teams, even in the Power 5, have blue chip ratios of 0. Meaning they don't have any 4- or 5-star recruit talent. And then you can see some of the middling teams, right? They have exactly that. They have middling talent. They have 20% 4 and 5 star recruits. So this gives us a nice idea of that relative athleticism, so to speak, because it's a huge predictor. And then returning production, right? Some of the big marquee teams, like we're gonna dive really deep in, but like LSU returning a lot of people, Florida State returning a lot of people. So like, what does that mean, right? Is, how well does that predict the future? But also looking at those teams, as well as teams that aren't returning any production at all. Kent State, I think, is a well-known dumpster fire right now, where the coaches left. I think they're returning like something like 20%. This thing, I guess, puts it at like in the 30s of their returning production. So very difficult for a team to have any continuity for them to win. And overall, this is a good way for us to look forward and how well teams will do.
Right. Okay. So Steve, I want you to jump in here real quick. Unless, sorry, do you have any 30,000 foot comments before we get into some Power 5 stuff?
Yeah,
I want to
by all means.
breeze it over, baby. Okay. All right. So we'll come back to this, Matt. We'll come back to this chart as we go through each too. But also for anyone new or listening, these charts and more are available on our website for free. So don't worry about like if it's whatever too small to read or you're having trouble. Go to our website, buildtheboard.com. We got these charts and more matchup maps and efficiency data available for you guys to view.
Yeah, and actually to piggyback off that, Kevin, as part of our toolbox, which is $9 a month, we put up a database of returning production and blue chip ratio for the last 5 seasons, which is really doesn't exist anywhere on the internet that I'm aware of, because I had to create it and scrape all that information. So it is a really great source of if you're looking for returning production and blue chip ratio data.
Yep, 100%. Thank you. All right. Okay, we got chronological order here. We're going ACC to start. Steve, all right. I want to start with you. What's your takeaway with this conference? And I don't know, man. What are you betting, if anything, because of it?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the conferences that have historically been just dominated by Clemson, right? I think we all know that. But the last few years under Mike Norvell, Florida State's really made some leaps and bounds. And I think this can be the year Florida State wins the ACC. We have a lot of it's a big transition year coming in for Clemson, moving over from the DJU years, which didn't really work out all that much. But you look at Florida State and not only is that offensive firepower just really there, but you look at the returning production. I think that's going to be the biggest thing that maybe separates the Florida States from the Clemsons, right? Because that's expected to be the 1-2 punch there. And I think you have Mike Norvell really kind of coming in and taking in that next step with the players who've proven that they can actually go through and win games. This should be a big year, for Jordan Travis and crew. I think they can make that leap. And so I'm really excited to see what they're looking at. And Florida State is my bet personally to win the ACC.
Florida State to win the ACC. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So,
Seth,
I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with you a whole lot, but I want to get into the nuance of that, because I think a lot of people are going to say, yeah, Florida State's good. They were good last year. They're going to be good this year. But I think some things we want to talk about, right? Because I think one thing we'll overlook is Clemson, and putting Clemson in that same category of stratosphere as your Alabamas, your Georgias, your Ohio States. And what is that? That's your ability to recruit and get really good talent. If we just move one slide forward and look at Clemson and Miami, I want to make this case for both of them. What you'll see is these are stacked rosters, blue chip ratios greater than 50%. And that means that the turnover year to year can be just as good as Alabama and Georgia, where they lose 40, 50% of their production and they are able to re-up and be competitive the next year. I would not be surprised to see a very, very competitive Clemson this year, right? Clemson can recruit with the best of them. We can see it here. And they're actually returning a lot of production. Now, you may think, okay, well, how much that offense wasn't very good if we go back to the matchup match. But just like you said, DJ Uyunglele, I mean, was struggling and had struggled in that offense for 2 years. And once they pulled him and they made the move at quarterback, I mean, they saw almost instant success. In fact, the game they pulled them in Syracuse, they went from losing that game and they ended up winning it in the last drive. So I would not be surprised. They also changed offensive coordinators. So they're kind of telling us, hey, we're not messing around here. And then the other big thing and big school to look at for me, Miami's blue chip ratio, again, greater than 50%. They're stacked with recruits. Cristobal, this will be his second year. This will be the second year he's able to, and really the first year he's able to have a whole year of recruiting and put his kind of team out there. So I agree that Florida State is for sure the favorite, but I would not be surprised if Clemson gives them a hard time. Clemson, in my opinion, is going to be very competitive, and more than likely, we're probably going to see a Clemson-Florida State ACC championship game, in my opinion.
Interesting. Okay, well, okay, we mentioned Florida State a couple of times, so I want to do this exercise because they play Clemson as well early.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So that's going to be obviously very telling. So all right, so Steve, I want to rapid fire here. So I want to break down their schedule. Give me just a W or an L as we go through. Okay, so to lead it off, baby, versus LSU.
Close loss. 3 points or less.
L's and L. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Southern Miss.
No, but I'm setting it up for a little bit later. So yeah, go for it.
Okay. Southern Miss.
Yep. Win.
Okay. Boston College.
Win. Blowout.
At Clemson.
Win, because they take the lessons from the LSU loss. They come together and they figure out their weaknesses and they exploit a Clemson team on the road. In Death Valley.
He's got the breakdown of it. Okay, good. All right. Then versus Virginia Tech.
Win.
Okay. Syracuse.
Win. They're winning the rest of these games.
Oh, okay.
The only close one would be Miami. The look ahead game person in the year, Miami. Everything else they're winning this.
So you have them losing one game. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
And
one potentially two.
And I think they'll have to win one game. If you're a Florida State fan, you're aiming to lose one game to make the playoff. Yeah. That's your only, and you're going to have to then go. This doesn't include the ACC championship. So you lose one game, presumably you're in the ACC championship. You got to win that. You win that, you're in the playoff. I think so. And I think you're right, Steve, that LSU loss is actually going to be important. If it literally could come down to they lose small, right? Because we don't know what ends up happening. If LSU ends up somehow getting close, does that win come into play?
Because LSU, LSU is, we'll get to the SEC in a little bit, but LSU has been talked about as, I want to say a sneaky good team, but they're a good team. So that'll be a good
I don't think you can say they're sneaky. I mean, they're forecasted to win 9.5 games.
I don't think you can say sneaky either, but
yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Now I will say, I'm going to make a quick point to going back to the Florida State versus Clemson argument, because again, I don't need it to be a blowout, but I do like Florida State slightly more. And what I think comes back down to is, we saw a Clemson team. Clemson historically has been good on defense, right? Since the Dabo era started, that's been one of their big calling cards. Now, obviously, they had Trevor Lawrence and all that stuff, but their defense is the tough defense. But we saw that last year with the offense really struggling. It comes down to that question of what wins championships, right? Is it defense or offense? If you have to choose one, obviously you would rather have both. But I wonder, going back to your point, Seth, about the commits. Clemson has the higher blue chip ratio. They have 1 5-star and they have 18 4-stars coming in, right? Versus Florida State has 1 and 8 respectively, 1 5-star, 8 4-stars. But most of Clemson's recruits are high recruits are on the defensive side of the ball, which again makes sense, right? I mean, you got Will Shipley coming in, who should have a good year running the ball again. We'll see. I think it's Cade Klubnik's going to take over full time for a starting quarterback. And so, you really don't need a bunch on the offensive side. But I wonder if Florida State, if you go back to the next slide, Kevin, if Florida State can really, the EPA. Yeah, thank you. That one right there. Yeah, thank you. If Florida State can keep this high-powered offense going with some more receivers coming in, is it gonna matter per se?
Yeah, do they bridge that gap?
That's my big question mark. And I'm willing to make the bet that they can. I don't know if they will. We'll see when the season comes, but I'm willing to make the bet that they can. That's why I think they can upset Clemson.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really great way of looking at that, and that's a good point, and why the matchup maps combine with the kind of forward-looking statistics here, because you're right. Clemson has to do a lot more to even get, to par, so to speak, right? Where if all Florida State has to do is just be who they were, right? And that's what makes the strong case with you have such a high returning production. It's a lot more realistic and probable that you're going to be who you were when you're returning a lot of who you were, right? This is, this is one of the highest returning production teams, almost 80% total, right? So it's not unrealistic to think you're going to get the same thing out of the team. And maybe you're right here with Clemson. They're returning a lot of production as well. Is that a good thing? Because if you have a lackluster offense, but maybe that's where the offensive coordinator comes in. But I'm with you. I think the other question I have, Kevin, if you can go back to the matchup map, is Drake May and UNC, this super, super potent offense. I know, it doesn't show you here with all of the teams, but when you zoom out as a overall and look at the whole landscape, I mean, that one, you can see this is one of the best offenses in the nation. They lost their offensive coordinator. And what does that look like? Does that, shake up this division and, we don't see the same potency? That to me is a big question as well. And maybe do you see regression there and makes this kind of division a little bit even easier for the Clemsons and the Florida States? That's the other kind of big kind of thing coming out of this. And then I think the other only thing we didn't talk about is Louisville. Louisville has a weird, if I'm not mistaken, a really high blue chip ratio. And there's a little bit of hype. Yeah. Like they're weirdly stacked. This team has kind of got a lot of low-key talent for a team that was kind of middling last year. So are they able to kind of, 40% are they able to make some noise with that? Right. So it's like, to them, if you're looking for a dark horse, like, my D-gens out there that I want to get the plus 1,000, the plus 1,500, trying to target these high blue chip ratio, high recruit level teams is how you're going to get outsized gain, right? Because talent rules all in college. So I think them in Miami, so Louisville and Miami, to either win the Big 12 or go, over their wins could be potential plays. If you're kind of trying to look for angles here, because not a lot of people are going to be maybe a little bit on Louisville, but everyone's low on Miami just based on last year. But I think there's a lot of reason to believe this year can be very different than last year. But for me, ACC, I think is Florida State's to win, and maybe they're going to do the Texas where they're going to try to win it and then leave. Seems like that they're trying to as we speak. So hit it and quit it.
Yeah, on the way out the door. Don't let the door hit you. Yeah, everyone else will be glad that they're gone, I guess. Yeah. So all right, ACC is shaping up to be maybe a little more interesting than at face value. So Florida State's maybe to lose, but watch out for the up and comers.
And the betting market agrees. It's Florida State's to lose. Florida State's favored. I think it'd be really cool for kind of the last nostalgic season we're going to have with college for Florida State to make it to the playoff. There's something they were such a powerhouse, and I think there's just something really romantic about. Like, could you imagine like an Alabama, Florida State, Ohio, like just some of these like Nebraska somehow ends up in there. Like, I don't know. There's just something romantic about it.
Unbeknownst to you, you were doing some fantastic foreshadowing for a point that I have come to pack.
Oh, okay. There we go. I like it.
Let's head on down the road here. So next up is the Big Ten. Okay, so here's the matchup map for Big Ten, offensive, defensive, EPA. I mean, any surprise guys outside of the usual suspects, Ohio State and Michigan, and maybe if you want to throw Penn State in there, but what's unique about, or what's to look forward to in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, looking forward, I think what we're going to see is the same old what you just said. This is a Michigan, Ohio State kind of front-led thing. All from a talent standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, for the last, I don't even know how long, these teams have kind of gone back and forth. Obviously, for a long time, it was just Ohio State. Michigan has kind of turned it on the last couple of years, winning both those matchups the last 2 years.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if we look at the blue chip ratio, I mean, yeah, you can see Ohio State takes the cake this year in recruiting. They're coming in with the highest blue chip ratio, and they're returning a fair amount of production. Now Michigan's returning more norm production there. Maybe more continuity there. I think the first couple of games last year with Michigan, they were starting multiple quarterbacks. They were like, I don't even know, kind of crazy. And our boy Harbaugh dodged a bullet there. I guess he was buying some kids some hamburgers or something. They were trying to suspend him a couple games. So it looks like he dodged a bullet. But I don't know. I mean, I have some takes that we'll talk about in a little bit on some of the new coaching and what that looks like. But I don't know. To me, it's Michigan, Ohio State, 1A, 1B, and everybody else is kind of in second. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, for me, that two big thoughts comes to this. You look at the turnover production and the blue chip ratio, right? So if you go back one slide, Kev, Michigan is one of those teams where you have what's going to win out. You have stability with JJ McCarthy at quarterback. He's going to be the guy, right? People forget Blake Corum was an absolute beast in the running back. He got hurt towards the end of last season.
Yeah,
he's back and he's healthy, right? And so, you did lose some key pieces on the defensive side of the ball, but you've got most of those folks coming back, right? 75% overall return production versus Ohio State, who I think the ceiling's higher because they have, arguably the best wide receiver core in the nation, right? They have these high-powered recruits coming in, but it's going to take them time to get in the system, especially that quarterback position, which, as I understand, it's still, a little bit. I think they maybe solidified it now, but there's a lot of debate going into the season as to who's going to be the Ohio State quarterback. And so we've seen the Alabamas do it every year, right? We see them lose a quarterback, build a quarterback. So it definitely can be done. I'm not saying it can't be.
We've seen Ohio State do it.
Make you do it. Yeah, exactly. Would shout out Justin Fields, right? Justin Fields and CJ Stroud. Can they do it again, right? So definitely can do it there. But to me, this is 1A, 1B. And I think I might have to lean slightly towards a team with momentum the last couple of seasons in Michigan with that little bit of stability, maybe if they give them the edge, but I wouldn't be surprised. Now, I will say, though, and this might be a hot take, let's talk about Wisconsin, because Wisconsin might be the team that no one's talking about that could win the Big Ten, which I know sounds wild, but this is purely a factor of divisions, right? So you have Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State all in the same division within the conference, within the Big Ten. They're going to beat up on each other. If Wisconsin just kind of skirt its way through to the championship game, they just need one upset, right? And so if you go to the next slide, Kev, when you look at Wisconsin, right, offensive EPA, right here in the Big Ten matchup, right? So just like Steph said, Ohio State and Michigan kind of in a league of their own, right? And really Ohio State in a league of their own and everyone else. Wisconsin had a slightly above average Big Ten, which is the Big Ten. Let's not get crazy, right? But a slightly above average offense for the Big Ten, despite Graham Mertz. I'm not a Mertz fan whatsoever.
And firing coach, they fired their coach. I don't remember what week, but they lost continuity. This was this wasn't a smooth ride.
Right. And so, obviously it's their defense and their running game that's been the bread and butter of Wisconsin football. But you bring in, you got Tanner Mordecai coming from SMU, high-powered offense. To Steph's point, you talk about UNC firing or losing Phil Longo, your offensive coordinator. Where'd he go? Wisconsin. Right?
Yeah.
And so you take a team that was outside the top 100 in offensive production, and you put in some legit weapons to the air raid style offense. Oh, and they still have their running game there. This could be a team that could be pretty sneaky good and just needs to upset Ohio State or Michigan to win the Big Ten championship. One game.
No, you said it best. I do think this is a sneaky good bet. Luke Fickell obviously did a shit ton at Cincinnati. I mean, he did the impossible. So tell me what he's going to do in a Big Ten with all the resource, right? I can't. I don't disagree. And then, like you said, you take a really potent offensive coordinator. What does he do? And now, that's still the big unknown because he's not going to obviously have the same pieces. But even if he gets, 70% of that success, that's going to be a big move forward for Wisconsin's for known one thing, just like fullbacks, like running the ball, that's it. If you can bring any nuance to that offense, that's a pretty big deal, especially to your point in the teams they play in the matchups. You got me hyped. You got me hype on that one. I'm trying to look up right now what the Wisconsin to win the Big Ten is.
That's funny. Hey, okay, I want to go back. I got a quick question for you guys because I'm having trouble reconciling something. Is Jim Harbaugh building a system up there that's just he would rather have system players as opposed to hardcore 4- and 5-star recruits, because their blue chip ratio, I didn't even realize this before we started recording, miles behind Ohio State and even miles behind Penn State. Michigan's
Yeah.
blue chip ratio is about 36%, which is even lower than Michigan State's. Wait, what's
Yeah.
the?
I was thinking a lot
struck me as
about
very
this. No, I agree, and I don't know. People have raised some issues with on threes, kind of blue chip ratio statistics. Is it something there? The other thing I was thinking of, is this an artifact of what is this? Is this one of the major artifacts of the transfer portal? What do I mean by that? You can now transfer in a student that has 3 years of tape that is 4 and 5 star athleticism, but when they were a recruit, were not 4 and 5 star recruit. And so they're saying, hey, we want you to come to Michigan. This is, you made it, right? If you're the guy that was a 3-star and you're playing outside of your league and you play at Georgia Tech or you play it wherever, that's an upgrade. You get to transfer into Michigan. Yeah. So I wonder if it's an artifact of them taking advantage of players that when we projected, we basically got wrong. Their talent was actually better, and they've now proven that. There's tape for that, and they're saying, come on in. We would love to have you.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen any good stats maybe you guys have about how because traditionally speaking, the blue chip ratio does not incorporate transfers, right? Like into the calculation. But
there's different ways to calculate it, so it's hard to know exactly. But yeah. But they wouldn't for sure, even if it did, and they were technically a 3-star in high school, it would still not count. So that's the big thing.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. I just found that very odd. So I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on over there. So
all right. So I think you're onto something here, Steve, because what would you think the odds would be to bet Wisconsin
to win the Big Ten?
Win the Big Ten?
Yeah.
I mean, I 700 or more.
Oh, okay. Then we're right around that. I was thinking it's got to be like plus 1,000. The best you can get is at FanDuel plus 950, but there's as low as plus 600 on BetMGM. So FanDuel's double dog daring you, and they double dog dare you enough, and you get them right, they will limit you. So be very careful. Yeah. Be very careful. But like consensus is plus 819. So I don't know. I find that pretty interesting. I have to say that may be a little sprinkle.
A little sprinkle, huh? Yeah. All right, good. We're only
I love you guys know this. I love to make bets where the situation, you're really betting the situation. Like you're like, does it happen all the time? No, but like you really just want to be betting things where like only one thing really has to go your way when everybody believes for sure 100% Ohio State or Michigan. It's like, yeah, but there's these weird situations that happen. I think we're going to talk about them in the Pac-12 later, like where whoopsie daisy, they weren't supposed to lose that one game, and that just messes everything up. And we see it. I mean, we see it every single year. I mean, think about how good TCU's season was last year, but Kansas State's the one that actually won the Big 12. Thinking about it's just chaos. It's just college is chaos.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Two divisions in. We got uncertainty in the ACC potentially, and then we got a potentially new sprinkle play from the Big Ten. So
I'm going to definitely sprinkle that. I'm definitely going to sprinkle that.
Okay. All right. Let's move ahead then. Big 12. Interesting couple of things here. So Steve, Steve, we'll start with you, man. What's couple of outliers here if you want to look at it. Kansas, I would say basically on the opposite ends of the universe, but what's your thoughts, or what are you breaking down here with the Big 12 specifically?
Yeah, so I have two major thoughts. I guess three thoughts. One is just is Texas football back? No, I think this is going to be it's just going to be another shocking year. But again, we talk about these opposite ends of what wins championships, good offense or good defense. And you look at this, Kansas is in a league of their own offensively. And then we knew last year defensively, what defense was their Achilles heel. And we saw that time and time again in these, 40, 50 point shootouts, that they would lose. But if they can tighten that up even a smidge, that Kansas firepower is something to be reckoned with. And then my other thought is Iowa State going to have a team this year? I mean, if you guys see, I think it's like up to 7 players and staff now have been indicated in the whole sports betting thing.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to see, Iowa State. I don't know if you can bet, like in NFL, you can bet like who has the least amount of wins. So like can I just
Yeah.
fade Iowa
Oh, I'm
State,
sure you can.
right now?
Yeah. They got some run for your money, though. You got to bet on what's the implode that's going on in Northwestern and Kent State. So there's a couple of front runners here for dumpster fire. But yeah, very interesting. One question I had about that, I keep seeing them like get hit with like they were betting on games, but then they were tampering. I'm like, how do you tamper with the evidence? Like, isn't it all digital?
Yeah.
Like, what do they do? They're like, just delete the app. It's done. It never happened. Yeah, I'm with you.
Quick.
Oh yeah.
So I did one more quick on that. I guess I saw one of them was like the kicker was like betting the under in the Iowa State-Iowa game, but it's like that's not insider trading. Everyone
That's free
knows
money.
that game's going under.
Yeah, come on, man. What are we talking about? Yeah, I think to your point, Kevin, if you can go one forward, I think it's really like not only is Kansas like so potent offensively, they're returning the most overall production in the whole nation, right? That's huge. Now let's hope most of that is on the offense, to your point, and not the defense, because this is one of the historically bad defenses. But you're right. We can get any incremental improvement. I mean, 10, 20% improvement there. They're just sheer scoring so many points, assuming they can stay that potent. They're going to be in a lot of games. And to set this up, like I bet them to win the Big 12. You can get them at plus 5,000. I mean, that can't be the case for a team that potentially may be scoring an insane amount of points. We've seen chaos happen just last year where we see TCU dodge bullet after bullet after bullet after bullet. I mean, how? They could just make plays. They could just score points. So I'm not saying that this is 100, this is no lock. This is nothing like that. But this is another situation where you can't tell me the true implied probability is only 5,000 plus 5,000 for a team that we know is going to probably put up an insane amount of points.
So to your point, returning 94% of the offensive production and 75% on the defense still.
Wow.
So with the zero,
hopefully those are the good defensive players.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to your point though, with Texas, I disagree with Steve. I don't know if Texas is back, but Texas is preparing to come back. I mean, they got a really high blue chip ratio. This is, I think, Sark's fourth season, maybe. Probably looks like we're going to see Quinn Ewers in the second year. I mean, this is a team that played Alabama competitively, and until that injury, right, they were potentially going to win that game. It's really difficult to see if we go back, like who's actually giving Texas a run for their money, offensive and defensively. I mean, TCU lost everything. I mean, this team lost their offensive coordinator. They lost basically their whole offense. If we look at that, their returning production, you'll see it's like it's way less than average. Yeah. So yes, they have some recruits, but I mean, they lost everything. So, and you combine that with all the luck that they saw last year. I mean, in my mind, only Oklahoma is the team that's got the talent to challenge them. And, that's just kind of these, the quote unquote balance aspect. But then you have your other teams like Kansas that we're talking about that can just score. And whoopsie daisy, they just score enough points to stay in games and win a couple that they shouldn't. The other team that's bubbling, and we'll talk about it at the end, but Houston's another interesting one where they have like a weird amount of blue chip talent, but they're supposed to be this kind of small school. So can they win? I think their over-under is like 4.5 wins, where it's like low enough that they just like accidentally have to win one game and you'll cover.
Yeah.
Basically.
This is on Houston. This is their first year in the Big 12, right?
I think it's them in Cincinnati.
Yeah, in Cincinnati. So that'll. I mean, I don't know what their schedule looks like in front of me, but
and maybe that's why they're being punished.
Yeah, it could be because I was trying to nail down some plays earlier. Their over under is only at 4.5 this year.
Yeah,
I mean, still, but over 50% both on the offensive and defensive side, returning production.
Their blue chip's weirdly high. Yeah, see, look at their blue chip ratio.
Yeah.
They have a higher blue chip ratio than Nebraska.
Yeah,
that's weird. That's on that I think that number's low. I mean, we're going to talk about it when we talk about the model, but like I don't know that team. Have you done like some more investigation, Kevin?
Not quite.
Oh, okay. I haven't dug too deep. That's a big question mark to me though, but one that's piqued my interest. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
I will say
we
real
got
quick to your points,
Please.
Seth, you made a really good point. The plus 5,000 odds for Kansas, right? I think that's a good thing for anyone who's kind of watching, who doesn't really think about odds in terms of implied probability.
yeah.
But like, Seth, if you had to guess, like what based off your argument, like what we know it's a long shot. We're not saying it's a light. It's a long shot, and it's a long shot for a
it's a
reason.
long shot.
But what chance would you give Kansas to win the Big 12?
I mean, based off what we saw last year with TCU, and technically Kansas State won, like I said, so it's just chaos happening. Chaos is always happening. You can, injury can happen at the top. Obviously, it can happen at the bottom too. But I'm just saying, like, your Quinn Ewers goes down. Okay, all of a sudden Texas is probably not as big of a favorite. I mean, realistically, 2 to 5%. We'll say 2% on the low end, 5% on the high end.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the point here, right? So these odds are priced in that 1.96%, so 2%.
Yeah.
So if you think Kansas has anything, I mean that's 2.5 times higher chance, right?
Yeah, if you get 5%, yeah. And
Yeah,
that's as right what we know today. One thing goes your way. Oh, whoops! Now all of a sudden it's 10%. I mean that's why we love the double dip method. But to your point, like the implied probability here is probably quite a lot off in my mind, and the model's mind kind of as well. There's some nuance to that, but yeah, to me this is worth every penny of. This is a full unit. This isn't a sprinkle. This is a full unit. Responsibly, but like this to me is a logical bet. I'm not saying it'll win, but I think this is a good bet. I think this is a really good bet.
Yeah, and I think Kansas has more than a 2% chance of winning. So yeah,
pulling it up.
And look, remember our methodology. Like if you're new, go check out our double dip methodology on our socials. Like, in fact, I'll give you some inside tea. I bet this with I only bet this with $200. I bet 4 $50 tickets through BetMGM because they're the ones that had it at plus 5,000. I think everywhere else has it at plus 4,000. Each one of my tickets, I could not bet more than $50. And after I bet the first one, I got a 5-minute delay on each of them where they were being reviewed.
Ooh.
So they're like, they don't want to take a lot of risk on this. I mean, they all went through, but like, they're like, you can go try to put $1,000 in this game on MGM. You can't. I guarantee you won't be able to. Like they know there's lopsided liability.
There's exposure there. Yeah.
Yeah. The exposure is tough. I'm not saying now, this is not saying like the books know and all this bullshit. That's not true. But I'm just saying that what they are good at is recognizing where they have liability, and they're not going to let you just get down infinite amount of dollars that can vastly grow to a huge lopsided liability. And to me, this is one of them where one or two things has to go in your direction, and all of a sudden you look like a genius.
Yeah, dude. Okay, we're 3 conferences in, and I thought I couldn't get more jacked for the season, but I'm getting so jacked right now.
And we're only 1 week away. That's the best part, right?
We're only 1 week away. All right, shall we move on? How about let's pour one out for the homie
Mm-hmm.
Pac-12, R.I.P. Last season for the Pac-12.
Is the Pac-12 is the Arizona gear with the Pac-12 patches like going to go up in value?
You know what? Yeah, get it while you can. Get it
while it's hot. Yeah.
So in the last season of the Pac-12 here, I mean, again, some interesting teams here, but I'm technically not a Pac-12 alum. You guys both are, haven't been to Arizona. So Steve, I will start with you. What do you? It's sad. First of all, let's just not kid ourselves. But what's going to happen in the Pac-12 this year? What are you looking at? Which teams make sense? Which teams don't?
Yeah, first and foremost, R.I.P. to the Pac-12. It definitely, as a double alum, it's wild, but we kind of saw this thing coming. But I am just happy that our games, as an Arizona fan, will be on Big 12 with actual, network television, nationwide network.
You can actually watch
versus
it.
Versus Microsoft Zoom TV Plus thing you got to download off a sketchy website to watch Pac-12 games now. With that being said, I'm biased. I definitely want to root for Arizona. We got our first 5-star recruit coming in. Could there be some things with Jed Fish and Co to kind of really turn this program around? But I think until otherwise proven, it's going to be between SC and probably Oregon. Really anybody on the right side of the matchup map, you can make an argument for. But I think SC is a little bit ahead of the curve. What I do feel a little strongly about though is, well, I'm all for Coach Prime, and I love what he did at Jacksonville State, right? I don't think that that's going to be the same thing in year one at Colorado. I know that's a team, right, who's rip roaring through the transfer portal both ways,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But so I think that's going to be more hype than actual, content that gets put on the football field. But we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah, but to your point, if you pull up the blue chip ratio, one interesting thing, I agree, this is basically an experiment, and we're gonna all kind of get our first a look at what the effect is. But this is basically a whole new team, a whole new roster, and done completely through the transfer portal. Well, I will say this, I've gotten we've shown this map on our lives, and they get a bunch of questions about Colorado. This is the one thing I will point out, where they are on the blue chip ratio looks kind of low. But remember, this is a team that had 0 4- and 5-star recruits last year, right? So they have increased you to almost 25% through the transfer portal. So I agree that this is, to me, an unknown. It's a stay away bet. Yeah. Why? Because if this bet is either they're gonna win 1 game or they're gonna win like 8 games. Like, and there's no way of knowing. Now I can make a case. Well, with that amount of talent, they should be competitive. But what do we know the Pac-12 does? The Pac-12 always cannibalizes itself and is always competitive within itself. So I agree. This is to me, that's a stay away bet. Anybody telling you that they know what's going to happen there, I think is fool's gold. This is a complete experiment, and a good one to note, right? Note to self of like, okay, what going forward, what's this look like? If you have a coach come in and kind of revamp the whole team, like, is this something you can do in a season, or is it completely not feasible? Who knows? From the Arizona standpoint, though, I disagree a bit. I think that this is one of the most potent offenses in the nation last year. Yes, are they on the same par as USC and Oregon and Washington? No, but their number is 5. You can bet 5 games, right? And we just said that the Pac-12 cannibalizes itself. This, to me, is a great over, and I've actually bet this. No bias here, not at all as an alum, but I do think this is the year where they can take that step forward. And I think at the 5, it's a buy low spot for sure for me.
I mean, 81% returning production
of one of the better offenses in the nation. Now they have the same kind of issue as Kansas. They couldn't stop anybody. Now, can they get a little bit better, there? To be determined. This insult to injury, USC just went ham on our secondary and linebacker core, and I think they took 4 of our starters and they transferred to USC. So that really sucks. But hopefully, they weren't good anyways, and that's why our defense is bad.
Caveat, double caveat, triple, no bias whatsoever. You being a U of A alum, but nonetheless. So the Pac-12 is interesting. I mean, you mentioned it. This is my, I guess, mental model and kind of wishful thinking as well. Sprinkled in with some to back up with the data here. So USC, one of the most storied, programs in the country, haven't been great for, recent history, but within the Pac-12, and let me go to, am I on the right one? Yeah, I'm on the right one here. But within the Pac-12, they're only behind Oregon in terms of blue chip ratio. And I don't know. Right now they're at, sorry, I just lost them. 55% blue chip ratio. Okay. And I don't know if that technically includes the transfers or not, but 75+% returning production on both sides of the ball. Okay. That is, I think, good for net number 1 in the conference if my math checks out here. So I like USC to overachieve. I like them to go over 10 wins. I think they're definitely worth, I don't know if there's value per se, but I like them to win the Pac-12. And I would not, and I have already, this was a long time ago, and this was not based off any of the numbers that we're talking about or seeing here. This was purely based off of kind of a visceral feeling, but I'm already on them to win the championship this year.
National championship.
The national championship, yes. I don't know if I will do the double dip. I haven't done it yet to get there yet, but I really like what I'm seeing, top to bottom with between their schedule. I know it's pretty it's pretty brutal because I think they play
Oregon, Washington, and Utah, and don't forget Arizona.
The back half is brutal. Yeah. So Oregon, Washington, Utah in the last month and a half of the season. Notre Dame in there as well. Of course, Arizona, right? Yeah. So it's back heavy, and it's gonna be difficult. I think for them, it'll be a season-long sweat for sure.
Yeah.
But Caleb Williams, man, I mean, right? Consensus returning Heisman Trophy winner who maybe can do a two-peat.
Number one pick
potentially. Right. So I don't know.
Do you know who they hired as their quarterback coach?
Oh, don't remind me. I know. Yeah, Cliff Kingsbury. I know.
Oh, I would thought you would think that's a good thing.
You know what? Maybe it is for them because maybe college is just his forte, right? Maybe that's just where.
Yeah, I mean, his last forte was with Patrick Mahomes. I'd say that's a pretty good forte.
For sure. But I got a little bit, I got salty.
Sure,
batteries, man.
He hurt you at the Cardinals. I got you. But different. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big. I think that's a bigger deal. I have not heard at all that kind of being touted as like a reason. I'm right. Completely on the other side of here with you. I have actively bet, I guess, against you. So I think I don't disagree with anything you've said. I think that USC should be the favorite to win the Pac-12. They are the favorite to win the Pac-12. I think Caleb Williams continues to be efficient. I think they have made pieces on defense. I think that schedule is too brutal, and I think because of this one change in the season for Pac-12 championship this season, this is what can happen. This is the first season in Pac-12 championship history where it will not be by the divisions North and South. It'll be the winning percentage. USC accidentally stumbles and loses 2 games rather than 1, which I think they will lose at least 1 game in this kind of gauntlet. Literally, Oregon and Washington may end up paying the Pac-12 championship, and and USC can't get in. And I don't know that that's super probable. And on the other side, then let's just say USC makes it. More than probable they're going to play Washington or Oregon. So you can bet Oregon plus 300 or you can bet Washington plus 320. I've bet both of them to win the Pac-12. I think that there's a way higher probability that either one of them end up winning rather than USC, because to your point, yes, USC is going to be good, but they have to win. They literally have to beat like everybody, and then they have to beat one of them again.
Right. Yeah. Zero room for error for margin. Yeah. Whereas the other two are just the opposite, like a fortuitous bounce, basically, or like they don't. Yeah, the USC has to do everything right at every step of the way, basically, in order for it to happen. That weird quirk where, like, normally, even if they lost the 2, they could still end up in the Pac-12, no problem. Yeah. They could actually end up not even being able to play that game. And I think this is, to me, this is weird. I'm just betting on chaos, and the price is too good that I can bet both of them. And if as long as one of them wins, I win money. To me, all day. And this is not mentioning. Also, you could bet Utah, the 3-time back-to-back champion. By the way, this Pac-12 is going to cannibalize itself. Unfortunately, I think
as it does every freaking year, man.
Yeah,
but we don't talk about it. So does SEC. So does that's what competitive football looks like. And quite frankly, this is what it's going to look like moving forward as we get closer and closer to more like a league-based thing. This whole going undefeated thing. Is that really what we want in the first place? I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, that's where we're at right now. But, in the future, does it look like that? Or do the best teams have 3 losses? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. So, yeah, I just hope the Pac-12 has a good send-off. That's really just what that's what my heart's
Colorado and Coach Prime win the Pac-12 championship. Go to the playoff. Then leave.
Okay, but you teased it. You mentioned it briefly. So Pac-12 might cannibalize itself. All right. Well, then let's jump into the SEC then, because and this should be renamed the Conference of Champions. Sorry, Pac-12. But
hey, we're everything must go. How much you got?
Right. All right. So I mean, obviously the top dogs, no pun intended, in the conference. Georgia, Alabama, again, usual suspects. But I think some interesting players or things to know as far as other contenders in this conference. What do you say, Seth?
I say one of my bigger takeaways, and I'm not going to bet this because it's a little bit too close, but if you look at the returning production, I think Tennessee is really ripe with regression, unfortunately. It was such a Cinderella season last year. Hendon Hooker unfortunately got injured kind of at the end, and it all fell apart. But this team is losing half of their offense, and I mean big pieces: quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line. And yes, they're returning more than the average team's production or blue chip ratio as far as talent. But this is, you can see, your Georgias, your even Notre Dame or your Ohio State, like they have double the amount of 4 and 5 star recruits, and so of course they're able to rebuild year after year. But I think this may be too much for them to lose, and I don't think we're going to see nearly as competitive a team. Now, it's not. For me, I lean the under. I haven't actually bet it, but that to me is one of the bigger things. And then the big question mark is LSU or Alabama. And what's that gauntlet going to look like? LSU has to, we already talked about, they have to play Florida State week 1. Can they win? Can they win that game? And then they have to make it through Alabama and the rest of that to make it to the SEC championship game. Oh, yeah, just to play Georgia more than likely. And you have to go through all that just to make it to the playoff. I mean, to me, it's a gauntlet. So similar to USC, can LSU kind of make it through? Now, LSU is returning a shit ton of production. And, second year in that coaching staff, what can we see there? I don't know. The SEC is interesting to me. And then, of course, Georgia just kind of has a layup ride to the SEC championship, in my opinion, other than maybe Tennessee, but I'm not high on Tennessee this year. So to me, I think the dog's going to be the dogs.
Yeah, I think that's spot on.
Quantify it real quick. Yeah, a shit ton is 72% for LSU.
Sorry,
that's blue chip ratio. Sorry, but then offensive production returning 88% and 67 on the defensive side of the ball. So
yeah,
a shit ton.
Sorry, and this is one of the more potent offenses in the nation. Now, quite frankly, they will have to be more potent. They will. This is a team that if they want to make the playoff, they want to win the championship, they have to be better. Or I would say, like, teams like Florida State, quite frankly, if everybody regresses and they stay just as good as they were, they may be able to kind of get through. Or a team like Georgia, if they stay just as good as they were, they'll be able to win the national championship. LSU is going to have to take a bit of a step forward here. This was a top 20 offense, but is not a top 10 offense.
Yeah. Sorry, Steve. I think I cut you off there. What were you about to say?
No, obviously, I completely agree with that. I think this is going to be one of those things where it's Georgia. It's kind of the same thing we talked about in the Big Ten. It's Georgia's division to lose, and I think everyone would have to agree that Tennessee is going to be the next closest one. But is that enough, right? And then coming out, of the West, it's going to be Alabama versus LSU, and I think you can make an argument of could it be LSU's year to get out of the West at least, and then have to face Georgia in the SEC championship. But yes, Georgia lost a ton of talent. Half the talent went to Philadelphia on the defensive side of the ball. So there's that. But again, Georgia's one of those teams like Alabama who just re-ups with recruits every year, year on year, and high quality recruits. Now, Alabama does have the most 5-star recruits coming in this season out of any program in the country, but Georgia's number 2, right? And so, what do you do with that? And I don't know if there's enough there to really bridge the gap. Now, you can say the big thing for Georgia is what's that offense going to look like without Stetson Bennett, who's been there for a decade and a half? What's that going to look like without Todd Monken, their OC, right, who's now with the Ravens? But again, it seems like it's a system that can continually replace top tier talent, and I don't know if Alabama has enough to really dethrone them. What I've seen the last 3 years, early last 2 years going into this year.
Yeah, keep chopping wood. I mean, the other thing, I don't know if you guys saw at the SEC Media Days. So, I mean, one of the first questions Nick Saban got was about the quarterback controversy. I mean, this dude got demolished by Nick Saban and him saying, "Who says there's a quarterback controversy? I didn't say it. You're just saying that. That's like if I say that there's a hurricane coming, does that make it true?" And then literally after he says that, he goes, he's like, "I knew you were going to ask that. I had that ready to go." To me, that's a premeditated, there's an issue at quarterback. I mean, they went after the spring game to the portal and picked up the Notre Dame quarterback who was in the portal that's transferring. Who did they hire as their offensive coordinator? the Notre Dame's former offensive coordinator, right? So to me, that's like we didn't like what we saw at the spring game. They lost their defensive coordinator to Ole Miss. I mean, I'm not calling for Alabama's crumble, but I can understand it. I mean, it's a little bit shaky. But with a recruiting class like that and Nick Saban's resume, for me, I think I got to lean that the guy knows how to manage turnover, and he's had offensive coordinators leave year in and year out and upgrade every year, right? So he knows that. The one question I had for you guys, Florida is being touted as this horrible bottom feeder, like they might as well not even come. But this team has like 80% blue chip ratio. This is insane talent. This is, maybe it's young, yes, but this is a team that has got some of the best players in the nation on it. You can mess around and win some games. What are you guys' thoughts here on that? I mean, that's just an insane blue chip ratio. Insane.
Two words. Two words why I'm not a believer for this. I get what you're saying, Seth, and that all makes sense. But my two word response is Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz.
Yeah.
And now to be fair, right? Wisconsin system clearly hell of a lot different than Florida system, right?
Sure.
That's it's
but Graham Mertz is a hell of a lot different than Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
Very true.
But in a negative way. Yes.
Yeah. Not in a good way.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think they're gonna be bottom feeders to your point, Seth, but I have a hard time believing from what I've seen from Mertz's resume to believe they can be a top 2 team in the SEC. Now, is there value on their win total? To your point.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Possibly, right? Yeah, but
I think it's at 4.5 or 5. It's low. It's insane.
And that's a bit disrespectful.
5.5. So you got to win 6.
Outside of Vanderbilt, which is only 3.5, which they barely count, as far as this discussion goes. The lowest over under total in the SEC is Florida, 5.5.
Like, that seems weird to me. Like, South Carolina's that good, Auburn's that good, Mizzou's that good, A&M's question mark. I mean, what is Mississippi State going to be about? I mean, Mike Leach, Kentucky's question mark. Like, that's a lot of question marks. I don't know. To me, I haven't bet it. By kickoff, I'd probably end up, to be honest. It just doesn't make sense from a talent standpoint. But I guess I didn't really kind of zoom out enough. Like, that's, you can say all that, but if your quarterback sucks, we saw it with DJ Uiagalelei. Like, you're screwed. You're screwed.
They had some interesting cross-conference games. Though. They play Utah to kick off the season.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then obviously they got Tennessee. Then they'll play Georgia, then LSU and Florida State to end the season. So
gotcha. So they have a pretty tough.
Yeah, those are tough. Those are tough, But all the other ones are, I want to say, layups. You got McNeese State, Charlotte, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. So there's 4.
Give me 2. What else? What are the other 2?
All right, so I'll just go. Let me go in order real quick. So you got Utah week 1.
Okay.
McNeese State, then Tennessee, then Charlotte, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Georgia Dogs, Arkansas, LSU, Missouri, and then Florida State.
I think they could literally win 8 games. Where 3 of those games are going to be difficult, but like they could easily upset, and you only need one of them.
I mean, just what? Just based on like using the blue chip as a basis for it? Because I mean, are they stopping anybody on defense here?
Look, I mean, they're going to lose to Alabama, or they're going to lose. I had them losing to Tennessee, LSU, Georgia. All the other teams they're better than.
Utah?
I have them losing to Utah in that model.
Oh,
they only had to win 6 games.
That's true. That's true. Okay.
Like, I'm just saying, okay, look, is it 100% that they will beat South Carolina? No. But I guarantee that spread won't be anything more than a touchdown. And this is college, like anything can happen. Mizzou, again, same thing. It'll be less than a touchdown.
I guess to Steve's point, let's just see what Mertz what they roll out for him. And
all right. Hey, look, I'm just saying, I'm buying. I'm gonna bet it.
Okay. Well, my God. All right.
Now's the time to buy. Fear's in the streets. Graham Mertz is dying. Everybody, the world's ending. Now's the time to buy Florida.
Okay. All right. Well, let me. All right. Let's level set here real quick. So we went through all 5 power conferences, and I thought there were some good takeaways from every single one of them. But
yeah,
we went through. We touched on at the beginning, like using offensive and defensive EPA, and using things like blue chip ratio and return production to model something and to predict outcomes. How is that important, or why is that something that people should be looking at, or why is that something we do? So Seth, I want to start with you because and we didn't go through the LSU schedule.
Oh yeah, let's do it. No, let's do it.
Let's do that real quick. So okay, whatever Steve said earlier against, what did he say? I forgot. Steve, since you did FSU, give me LSU again. Okay.
Oh no, I think it's a Seth section, because this is one where we were talking about who's going to.
All right.
Okay.
My bad.
Seth, okay. So this is LSU's. So we're gonna do LSU's. LSU's one of the favorite to win it all. Let's work through their schedule and see actually how many wins they end up with, because this is a slippery little game schedule they have here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So right off the bat, FSU.
I think they lose. I honestly do. I think they lose this game.
Okay. Georgia.
They play Georgia. No, I think that's a different. This can't be this. Can this be right? Do they play Georgia week 2, or is that a difference? Is that a different?
No, that would be
a different logo. Oh, Grambling State. Sorry.
Yeah, no. See, it is. It's Grambling State. Yeah. Hey, man. Wild. Hey, it could. You could just say the Green Bay Packers as well. Yeah, Grambling State. They win. They win big time. Michigan they win.
State or Mississippi State.
I think Mississippi State. They win. Yeah. Arkansas win.
Okay.
Ole Miss win.
Okay.
Mizzou win.
Mizzou. Auburn
win.
All right. Who's at the Vegas Golden Knights? Who's
Army? Yeah. Okay. The SEC is so hard. You have to play multiple sports.
All right, we got to win. Army. Okay, then Alabama.
This is so hard to forecast, because if you're from the Steve school, like, Alabama's done by now. Like, this is not. This would be the game when actually they probably become done, right? Because they probably lose.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think Alabama's back. I say lose.
Okay. Florida
win.
Georgia State
win.
And then A&M
win.
I think that's 9 by my math.
9 wins. 2, because they lose to A&M. And they lose, they lose to Florida State, and they lose to Alabama. And LSU doesn't take a step forward. Like I said, this is a good team last year, but I don't know why we believe they're going to get better on offense, and they have to. They have to get way better. Mm-hmm. So that to me is unproven. I think Alabama is more probable, or even A&M, to take a step forward. And then I think Florida State. So I'm low on LSU. So go Tigers.
I guess. Ooh, Tigers. All right. We were about to get there, but then digress on the schedule a little bit. So what's the deal, or why is it important, and how do we use these metrics like offensive and defensive EPA and the blue chip ratio and return production to incorporate into our model? So here up now is, on the x-axis, what our futures model has for predicted wins for each team, and then they stratified, plotted up against the markets win totals on the y-axis. So, okay, so Seth, generally speaking, is there a location? Is there somewhere you want to be on this graph in terms of like identifying discrepancy from the market or just go ahead.
So bottom right is betting over. We'll call that the over quadrant. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right there. So these are teams on the edges, and in there are teams you want to look at the over. And then the opposite quadrant, in the upper left, this is where you want to target unders. So basically, the first one is our model is saying they're going to win more games in the market, and then the other one is saying our model thinks that the team is going to win less games in the market. And then everybody else, to be honest, if they're not in those, kind of is saying that what our model has and what the market has is about right. And there's really not a whole lot of discrepancy. And that makes a lot of sense. There's not going to be an insane for the majority of teams, right? You're not going to see that much difference between what you predict and what the market predicts. So, there's a couple that jump off for me and the teams that I've bet. And there's some trade-offs, and we'll talk about the trade-offs. Like a model like this is taking into account a couple of things. It's taking offensive and defensive efficiency from last season. It's taking blue chip ratio, and they're returning production on offense and defense. Those are the main drivers here. And this is trying to incorporate all the information we have, right? Who was this team last year on offense and defense? Who are they returning on those from those position groups? And then what is their level of talent going into the season, right? And this is us quantifying those things and seeing where teams can maybe regress and take a step forward. So some of the teams, so what I've actually bet using these is I bet Arizona over 5. I think there's some good value there. Kansas over 6.5. Our model really likes that. I've also bet Liberty under 8.5. I would say this one's more of a lot more of an art. I'll tell you why. Our model falls short here of anything of the Power 5 because it punishes teams with 0 blue chip ratios. And most of the teams that are not in a Power 5 are completely made up of blue chip ratios of 0, right? And that's normal for those conferences. But for a model like that, it basically says, well, this team doesn't have a lot of talent, so they'll probably not win a lot of games. So use caution there, but our model has like a 2.5 game edge. So I like it. But quite frankly, I've never seen a Liberty game in my life. So take that for what it's worth. And then TCU. TCU is much more my own mental model than this model is actually giving me. And what I mean by that is our model isn't looking for, the impact of luck and, losing your quarterback and your offensive coordinator. And although our model is pretty much agrees for TCU to basically be around market, I think that there's value on the under. I think this team will regress, and I think they're losing so much that they won't be able to kind of navigate that. But this is a little bit more of art, I think.
All right, Steve. Outside of those ones, has anything caught your eye so far? What have you locked in or planned to prior to the season kicking off?
No, I mean, I think that's pretty spot on. I think you see the top right-hand corner, water is what, right? Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia. It's going to be teams that you're probably not gonna have a ton of edge. I'm very curious about again, going back to Wisconsin, can they go through and sneak some more wins up there? Again, they're right in that sort of line there where our model and the market sort of agree. So it's probably not a ton of edge there, but I do think they could have a bit of a luck factor there. And then Iowa, I'm really curious about what Iowa's going to do here. As someone who faded Iowa a lot last year, really toward faded Iowa and the under a lot last year. That's a I grew to love, but I'm not entirely sure what that's going to look like this year. But that's a team I'll be keeping my eye out on. But I do love the Kansas pick for sure, though. That's probably my favorite one that's on here.
Yeah, and one thing to point out with the Iowa stuff, just to use caution, Iowa, Marshall, Illinois, any of these teams that have insane defenses but actually really bad offenses, a model like ours is also going to punish them on the under. It's going to make them look like they're going to lose a lot more games than they probably will, mostly because they win very differently than any other teams. What I mean by that is they win their games defensively, where the vast majority of colleges won offensively. And so it looks like, hey, this team can't score at all, so there's 0 ways that they can win. But it's mostly because the defensive weighting is also not appropriate either, because these are literally by far away the best defenses. So just use caution there. That this for sure doesn't show the true value of an under for a team like that.
Yeah, makes sense. For me, the only other one that we haven't discussed is I like the under 6.5 wins for Oklahoma State. So sticking with the Big 12 theme. I mean, our model has them slated at 4.1 wins for the year. I mean, they're barely returning 50% of production on either side of the ball. One of the few teams in the Big 12 that has a 0% blue chip ratio. I think the others are like Cincinnati, BYU, and maybe one or two others. But Kansas being one
ironically.
of them. Yeah. But going back to the Big 12 discussion that we had and the teams that are potentially on the cusp of doing better. I'm not high on Oklahoma State's ability to eke out 7 wins this year. So I like their under.
Nice. Yeah, the other one too that I want to look at, like we were talking about before, Houston. Like you can see Houston standing out quite a lot there. Is there enough there to bet that over? I'm going to do a little bit more investigation there. And I think the talent is there though. That's the real interesting thing to me, and I think that's what's putting them at that number. But worth a double take for sure.
And I will say just real quick to Houston, that is something where they're coming from a smaller conference, up to the Big 12, but even back in the AAC, like they put up numbers. So I agree with you. So like the talent's definitely there. And how many times have we seen teams kind of swing up in the David versus Goliath matchup and hold their own? And I think Houston's one of those teams where, underestimate them if you want, until check the scoreboard when the game's over and they beat you and stuff.
Yeah, and now's the time to buy, right? I mean, like this is, everybody's. I mean, the market is kind of throwing them out, but they have a lot of the talent. This is a good offense, an all right defense, good talent, like returning an all right, like. Okay, like why are they so low? And it's truly just because they're in the Big 12. By the way, in the Big 12 is some big bad bear. I mean, Kevin just got done saying. I mean, half the teams have blue chip ratios of 0. In fact, Houston has a higher blue chip ratio than most of the teams. So I don't know. To me, it's a little bit concerning, but something to dive a little bit deeper in.
Yeah, for sure. And if you do, and that's a good note too, Seth, because if you guys do want to dive deeper on anything that we've discussed here, the charts and the information that we've been talking about, I'll say it again. If you want a good place where it's all housed, the best place to do it, just go to our website, bullytheboard.com. We have a ton of that information up for free on the website, as well as we have a toolkit that's on a membership basis, very affordable, $9 a month, where you can get access to not only additional matchup map efficiency data. Seth mentioned it earlier. You can download the sort of raw data and help use it to make your own modeling and forecasting. In addition to all the futures and weekly picks that we'll have for both college and NFL this season. So I think it's going to provide a lot of value for folks. So please check it out if you haven't. But all right, that's a wrap, boys. I think this board meeting is about to be adjourned. So again, appreciate everyone tuning in, sticking around. If you haven't already, again, just give us a follow everywhere at Bully the Board on all of our socials. We'll be back. We'll be back for our weekly shows once the season starts. Until then, boys, meeting is adjourned. Take care.
Take care.